computer.
Well, you know what? I'm going to double check one thing if I can. I had some students that I had a tentative thing this morning, and then I remembered I had this, and I got a message, and one of them confirmed that he had gotten it, and the other had not. So I don't see that. Okay, I just want to make sure. Oh, hold on.
Check.
Okay, we're all okay.
Okay. This is my backup recorder, just in case, like, something
Yep.
happens to.
I do feel good.
So,
I know what you're talking about.
some sort of glitch happens on
Okay.
the audio.
Yeah. All right.
And so, to start with, there were two, like, did you want to elaborate at all on the working with the grade book? Tell us about your experience working with the Canvas grade book, or do you feel like what you wrote is fine?
The grade book stuff is probably okay because it's more a case of I haven't really given it the right time yet because I'm just juggling too many things with the too many courses and didn't get out enough in front of it to get that stuff going.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm making do with just, falling back to their uploading assignments, and then I'm handing them back and keeping a paper record. But I'm planning on at the spring break, moving everything in, all the stuff that I've done on
and then
paper.
you just manually entering the grades for those, or you have?
I'm not even entering the grades. They're given it. They know what it is in my syllabus, my hard copy syllabus. It tells them what's the balance. So it's just not. They're not getting to use that feature yet.
Okay.
But I'm planning on spring break that I'm gonna have all that up, and then it'll be set up for the rest of the semester. I just couldn't stay ahead of that while keeping my other courses going. So
yeah, and if you have any additional input, like once you've gone through that, and you want to shoot me an email, that's totally fine.
Okay, that'll be good.
I will. My presentation is like everything has to be wrapped up on April 10th, basically.
Okay.
So
my break is certainly before then, so I'll have feedback for you.
And so
what I have noticed that was kind of nice was I did experiment with setting up some rubrics that I haven't actually used, in part because after I set them up, I realized, I wanted to change what they were. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go back in and change them before I start entering everything in, and that's partly what kept me from doing it. But I have found that creating the rubrics for the assignments was a little bit easier than what I was finding in Moodle. Yeah,
you like the rubric creation tools.
Yeah, but I haven't tried the feedback stuff online sufficiently, and part of the reason why is it's something that I think actually I would have to use Turnitin, and that was what was the barrier for me, because I like to highlight things on students' assignments and give them like proofing corrections, but also give them feedback on certain sections, and also ask them, could you bring this up in class? Right? And
I think if they upload their files like just as Word documents, if you have them turn it in, I think the speed grader still like ingests those, and you can use those speed grader functions have like the highlight, and you can do typing commentary or audio or video.
Yeah, what I found that I couldn't get, that I do remember seeing and Turnitin that I was wanting, was I wanted to have my stock 12 most common things that I'm doing and be able to click and say, it's just that, it's this, it's this, it's this, and have that gather. And what I'm finding is I can highlight it and then type my comment. And so it would mean, the workaround for that would be having a file with all those things and cutting and pasting that into the comments in that area. But I couldn't quite get that thing that Turnitin lets you do, where you sort of have a stamp or something, or different colored things that you can hit them with and they get that feedback. So I know that both of them get access into Turnitin. But I haven't done them, and so either one of them would have the same access to it. So I don't really hold it against one or the other. But it's not having that within the LMS itself and having to go out to Turnitin, which has kept me from getting into it. So
I honestly don't know if there are other workarounds.
No, because Canvas, at least it gives you something. And so if I wanted a quicker, dirtier one, but for a class that has, I'm thinking ahead to some of my classes where I have 70 or more students, and just that level, it means I can't deal with written material.
Yeah. Do you use TAs at all? Or?
I only sometimes get them, and they're undergrads. And so I can only give them so much. And it has to be really sort of super obvious rubric differentiation. And even within the same team, they're going to be such a range that, so that's part of it.
And is there anything you wanted to add about your overall recommendation to the academic senate? So I'm going to get better habit. This is Q10.
Okay. Yeah.
And that this is, so recalling your earlier recommendation to the academic senate, please provide some details about your reasoning.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add there?
So I could tell that the way the questions were worded, there's a few concerns, like the initial migration and the challenge that comes in there. I'm a little less worried about the initial migration, so long as it's just a once in a blue moon kind of thing, because we've been doing Moodle for a long time, and we left, I can't remember if it was WebCT or Blackboard. It wasn't Blackboard. We've had a couple of them, and I've tried to do some of them in the past. And if you jump any LMS to another LMS within a few years, then that's a concern. But if we're making a long-term 10-year commitment kind of thing, I don't mind some migration pain if what you're getting is good. What I am concerned about is that I have done a lot of work developing my Moodle. Is it going to take lots of work, and then is it going to go away? Either because decisions at the CSU wide and they take the decision away from us, or we find that that working with a company becomes problematic. I used to work in Silicon Valley. I know the startup game, and most of the companies I've worked for don't exist anymore. And sometimes their stuff gets bought out and handled by other folks well and incorporated into something rather, and sometimes it just dies in the vine. And right now I can't tell which Canvas is going to be. And that is a concern for me. So there's that. And then just as a one-time coder, I find Moodle easier because doing things, figuring out how to make things happen, creatively using, for instance, labels that I use to put warning messages to my students, like when they land in on the homepage, right, at the beginning or at the top of the Moodle course, I can have something turn on and say, your attendance is low, come see me, right? Because I can just have a conditionally displayed label, and that can be based on a grade value. I can't do that in Canvas, and I use that extensively. It's a really simple thing, but I haven't figured out a way to implement it. And so I like things being visible or not visible based on something else. I'm trying to figure out if...
So you have like those labels are all there.
Yeah, but in fact, I can show you. Yeah, so I can show you on, if I go into Chrome. Okay, so let's pull up a new window to keep us from getting confused. It's probably going to require me. Wait a minute, why didn't you go there? I didn't hit it right. Yeah, okay. I don't know why it didn't go all the way in. All right, so in fact, I will turn editing on because you'll see more that way. So right here, right up at the top, I've got this attendance alert. And if your score in the attendance drops below a certain level, this message shows up, and otherwise it disappears. I've turned off temporarily because some students were having trouble with homework assignments, but another one where your the homework alert was your homework grades are lower. And on some of my courses, I'll put in there another one where your overall grade right now is very low, right? And so you're in trouble, basically. Come see me because at the rate you're going. Super simple, just a conditional thing, and I haven't figured out a decent way to do that in Canvas.
And where do you set like what the condition is? How does it?
So if we so if we go into it, what you can do, And I guess I have to expand all. This is a feature that's changed. So the message is there, and then if I come down and it's just access restriction, look at the grade in attendance, and is it in that, whatever range, and then it's either totally invisible or it's visible.
Okay.
Right? Super simple.
Yeah.
But pedagogically, it's really effective.
Yeah. And with a class like 70 students, it'd be hard to really keep up on all that communication.
And I can say how many times in class, if you're getting this or if your grade's below or whatever, and they just don't hear it when I'm telling them.
And not only that, the students that are there and they're probably getting good grades, they're there.
Right, exactly. That's half the problem. I haven't seen you. Yeah.
That's half the problem. Yeah, I've noticed that before. You can't excoriate the people that are in front of you for not being there.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and actually, one thing I guess I've thought about this is trying to figure out if I could trigger something for the students who aren't coming to it frequently enough, because some of these courses they're supposed to be doing group work together. So I could have something say, just test to see, has it been more than 5 days since you've come in here? You're not here often enough. And just that automatic nudge that they could get without me having to, so they get to the point where they're ignoring my voice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is interesting. And I know that there are, people use the visibility in the courses. In Canvas, you can show things at different times,
right?
Module-wise, you can take a big chunk of content and hide it and show it.
Yeah,
you can't hide individual links or individual messages like that I've seen. You can do things like change the home page to any page in your.
Right.
So some people, like each class, each week they just say, this is the home page now. And then the student goes in, the page that comes up is the page for that day. So there are different ways that people are doing that, what they want to put a spotlight on. But this one is an interesting function that puts a spotlight that's dependent on what the students are doing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty
It helps with the differentiation. Right. So, I could also, on any given week, if I wanted to, I could have one part show up based on if they have a need. Right. And so I do that one right at the top, but theoretically I could have any of these during the weeks. Now I see that in Canvas, there are ways of saying you can't get to the second thing unless you've run through the first one, and conditionally on that, if you got scores in this range, go this way, and scores in that way. Go that way, which is cool, and it is something I intend to develop a bit. And that may be easier to do the simpler versions, if you know what I mean. And that's what I'm finding with Canvas is for some of the sort of basic, more limited stuff. If you weren't the kind of person to figure out how to do it, it makes some of that stuff easier. But if you're at all a person who is used to getting into systems and using conditional logic and doing all kinds of stuff, then I feel like I'm tied up. It's like,
so Moodle feels like if you're kind of a power user who likes diving deep, that there's lots to explore. And Canvas might be more accessible to people that have less ambitious expectations out of the LMS.
Yeah. And so I could easily imagine too for part-time lectures that might come in, it would be easier for somebody to hand them a prepackaged Canvas section, right, rather than going into Moodle. And if they're not already familiar with Moodle, the complexity of my Moodle stuff is tough. So I had a lecture last semester where we copied out my section, we loaded it into hers, and I walked her through setting it all up, but there's no way that she would have been setting it up herself.
So the transferability of course materials between full-time, part-time lectures might be better with courses that aren't as complicated.
Right.
And that Canvas would favor that. And if you had that teachers that teach at the JC, which is all on Canvas, and they're teaching here too, then there would be more continuity, and would be easier for them to bring their material between those things if they were. That is, I think that's interesting, like an interesting consideration. And so when you think about, your recommendation on the whole and you think about the number of power users that you would estimate of the faculty, and if you had to guess who's going to benefit more on the whole, where do you?
Well, I know that a lot of the difficulties we have here are because we don't have the local resources really invested to support you folks supporting us. And so it's harder for me to say if we had a hosted Moodle site that was kept fairly current and has a team that's more likely to add the handful of customizations that we would want, which is what an open platform gives you. It should, but we haven't been able to take advantage of that. And that seems to me is one of the biggest wins. And so if that were what our group were able to be working on, while the sort of mundane just keep it running and keep it current and all that work, like the rolls every summer is I know problematic for everybody, including you folks, and having that go away with a hosted system. So it seems to me you can set up a fairly simple, if you've got a lecturer coming in, it's easy enough to give them a relatively simple Moodle and it wouldn't be too difficult. But if somebody were having to come in and quickly knock out something and they weren't a complicated programmer, then Canvas might be a little bit easier. But I still think that the flexibility of Moodle is a bigger win for me.
And it's hard. So on the whole, going forward, you would like to see more, like if you went with Moodle, you would hope that some of the day-to-day keeping things up and going and functioning, you'd like to see more efforts of making some customized tools that address ways that things could work better in terms of like adjusting your resources. And I'll be honest, I don't know how specialized that type of tool development is. And I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if on other campuses, people that are computer science professors are the people that end up doing some of those efforts, or who ends up. The IT department I know has done a lot of that here. I know that can be resource intensive too.
Because I mean, given that it's open software, I could see whether it's even a curricular element of having some of the students, undergrad or grad, helping to improve the Moodle open platform. I mean, it would, I could see giving a team the assignment of figure out in Moodle how to convert somebody's course when it moves from one semester to another and shift all the grades, just like Canvas does. Right? It seems like a really interesting project that the project itself could be learning, and then it gets given out to the open software consortium, it's all working on them and everybody wins. And if the other schools are doing things like that, it seems like the LMS itself can be part of it makes a difference work rather than make work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting idea. I think it is difficult with even like the plugins and things that other people develop. I think that because it is open source and you bring together and add enough different components, doing the bug testing of those multiple different things that come into this system. I think that maybe, and I don't know, this is me, I've only been here for a couple of months in this department, but I'm guessing that that interplay between multiple plugins, then you can.
And I appreciate that, because I was
start to get nervous, and you might start to have other bugs popping up, and then to troubleshoot it, the only way to troubleshoot it is to get rid of all those things, right? So, but I think that is a really interesting idea, and
because I came out of Silicon Valley, right, and the Unix world, working for places. The last place was Next Computers, and so we were, I was usually a software guy in the hardware group kind of place, but often working with the software folks, and so I sort of remember that the development of BSD and all the rest, just people were jumping in, and we're all troubleshooting it and figuring it out, and it was pretty robust. I mean, look at all the servers that were running Unix behind everything, right?
Yeah.
And so there's, I don't know if it's just a romanticism of some of those origins, but it feels like the Moodle stuff could be.
Well, that's one of the things about Moodle is it's got to be one of the most successful open source, platforms right now, and so I think there is a certain pride in the academic community about that, and wanting to, that if you think about it, we're not all running Linux on Frankenstein machines. We're all running, Mac. So sometimes it's hard to know whether, you can't always say that one or the other, and whether commercially produced software or they're,
they have the
responsible to shareholders and they're responsible to other people, whether or not that whether that helps them keep their software less buggy, or I don't know, but at the same time, there's a part of me that is indie minded too and likes the idea of that there are, but it is hard probably to take advantage of the advantages of it being open source. So that's kind of what you were.
Yeah, and that's why I thought the hosted circumstance was a reasonable compromise, because somebody's making money on doing it cleaner. Yeah, which is you're getting the incentive of sort of what some of the private sector gives you. Right?
Okay.
And the commercial aspects, but you're not so constrained. Okay, here's another thing that is in there too. If I want to teach at a different place, right? If I just want to offer a course in the summer, not through the university, or as I look ahead to retirement, which is not too long away. If I develop stuff in Moodle, I can keep using it because I can just set up an instantiation and run it myself, right? Buy a machine and plug it in, right? And I couldn't do that with Canvas. So also as an academic developing my own intellectual property, the mobility factor with Canvas is problematic.
That's another good and interesting point.
Yeah.
So let's go to question 17.
Yep.
And this is the ease of use of Canvas. So please describe your experience using Canvas this semester at Sonoma State.
Yeah. Well, I think that the apps are nice. The fact that there's a different teacher app than there is a student app. And so what I am hoping is once, if we're into Canvas more and I've got the courses already built up more, I could do a lot more of the grading on a tablet, right? Traveling somewhere or whatever. That'll be really nice. And I like that its app seems to work better in the classroom environment. If I say, okay, pull this stuff out, add this in, or you can see it here or find it, and that part of it seems nicer than the Moodle app, which seems a little bit clunkier. What I have found harder, and I don't know how much of this is my naivete, is trying to, in a sense, put a skin over Canvas so that they're not seeing all, I can just go in and run around the files. In order to make files published and visible to them, they have to see the structure behind it, and be able to run through it. And so I can't do a pay no attention to the man behind the curtain kind of way. And so for some students, that gets them lost because they can start clicking on things and going in places, and they're not handheld. So I ended up in my, I've started to do stuff which I think helps us towards that, and I can pull it up here. So do I already have? Yeah. So if I'm in my, oops, come back here. So if I go to my ANT 386, right, and we start here, right, spinning, what's going on? Huh. Why is that taking so long? Okay, there we go. So they can come in and I've set this up, and they can go to the weekly modules, and this is actually just another page that's pointing to some of them that they can see. But what I'm finding is, like, if I'm trying to keep files and I'm trying to hide some of these things from them, I can't hide directory names and whatnot and have them see a file. So in order for them to get to a file, they have to be able to see the whole tree down. And so if I go back to my come on, pages, whatever, I'm having a slow response time in here.
It's possible because it's running like Zoom in the background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So if I was trying to do something like readings and resources and making these kinds of things available to them in a way that they're not seeing it, unless this part of the files and directories are open. And so that I have found sometimes students are landing in here where they go to the modules place, right? They jump into modules. And do I want them seeing how that's structured there? And I get the sort of visible, not visible, but I like in Moodle where I can make them hidden. I can make them visible but not accessible. So they see they're coming up. So that level of so here, I mean, for me, managing what elements are in here and the parts on it, I see some of the potential. But if I wanted to hide all this from them, I can't.
Yeah, so can you hide the module section? I don't remember. You've got the pages showing. And
well, anybody coming into Canvas always gets this. And as soon as something's published in those, then that part is visible. Right?
But like some of these things on the side you can show and some of them you can hide.
Can I hide it from them?
Yeah. These things on the left don't all need to show to them. Let's see. Maybe in the settings.
So if I go here and if let's just pick files, for instance, I can move it or I can disable it. Disabling it just takes it away as an option.
I'm guessing that it hides it there. Yeah, that.
Okay.
Let's see. Find one that you don't care anything about. Let's disable that. I think it'll become grayed out on the left side.
Okay. So, wait a minute. Did I just change? I did just change something. Oops. So maybe I don't want to hide the files. Let me just make sure I didn't leave the files hidden because my students have a take home and they might be trying to get into those files right now. Okay. So I don't think I disabled it. I still see it there.
Or if you want to mess around in like your sandbox, or I can follow up with you and tell you.
Yeah.
These things, exactly how to do it, but these things on the left are, you can choose what things are shown there.
I can. Okay.
So if you don't have a syllabus, if you don't want people to go in and seeing that page, or you created your own syllabus on one of the pages, that you didn't.
Because when somebody says a syllabus, I'm thinking a file that's a syllabus that I have to hand into my department because we're required to do that.
I think that the language of that is a little bit confusing to teachers who are, and certainly you could put that file.
Well, that's what I do. It's in that. Yeah. In fact, my files area. If we hold on, I'm not there. If I go to files, that's what I have here. The 2 revisions of my syllabus. So
and if you go on your syllabus tab, have you added like that file to? I think you could add that syllabus file here.
Yeah, I mean they see everything that's in the course here automatically, right? But to me, this isn't what I would call a syllabus. This is what I would call.
Here up at the top, you could insert that file that is like your document.
Yeah, I suppose I could. Where are they? What if they have it as moved? I suppose I could. Yeah.
I think you'd have to put it like underneath the title there, where it says the cover of like that image file. If you click on
here,
it says edit over there. I think that there you could add. an additional, you could
like something
stick that
here
file
would be
in here if you wanted to.
right, and then, yeah, so I could just go grab, say, a file, and is it other files? I can't remember what I put it in. Oh no, it's down here. So let's do that.
But I think that
now that's a link to the file that's there, right?
Yeah.
And so I could save that because I do want them, if they're jumping into the syllabus, I want them to know that the syllabus is really what's.
Yeah, so I think that is sort of like maybe the intended sense that one way or another you can put whatever text you wanted there, and then this is kind of a summary and outline, but
yeah,
I think that language can be confusing a little bit to people.
Yeah.
On the whole, do you think that your students found Canvas to be pretty easy to use?
I think so. My students are upper division majors in this particular section. So they've been around. Some have transferred in from the JCs and are familiar with Canvas already. And a number have just been doing Moodle enough and seen how differently that their instructors implement, that they're used to Moodle being very different depending on their instructor. And so they're good at nosing around. And then a few others just say, I don't get it. And, either I or one of the other students walks them through, well, what was it that you were having trouble with? And then they usually pick it up pretty quick. Yeah. I think that it's new enough that they're not really using a lot of the tools yet. Most of them are probably only having one course that has Canvas, so they don't understand the advantage of when multiple courses are there. The calendar helps them navigate back and forward, and getting the nudges from a message saying, "Hey, you've got an assignment due," coming up automatically. It's too soon to see what they're getting from that.
Yeah, still early days, and the pilot, there are only about 10 students that I found that are in multiple courses.
Yeah, a few of them are mine, actually, though.
Yeah,
because in anthropology, there's 2 of us in the department doing it, so that increases the odds.
Yeah. And so the migration experience, this is question 18. Tell us just a little bit about it. Sounds like you ended up building your course from scratch, or did you?
Well, I'm doing a combination. Sometimes I'll grab something out of Moodle and literally cut and paste and build a page from scratch, just because it's easier. And maybe even going into the HTML editor and dumping from the HTML from the other one. Sometimes I had also loaded the file in as a sandbox file in Canvas, and so sometimes I was moving some stuff from there. And I found that there were enough things happening that I couldn't track it, that's why I decided to, in effect, build most of this stuff and maybe import it over from the sandbox and not really do an import.
So you did like an import into a sandbox, and then you kind of built the course from scratch, and then there were pieces that you brought in from the sandbox.
Yeah, so like I brought in all my weekly assignments, just moved them over, because once I figured out, okay, with each of them I have to tweak these 3 things, get the date fixed, do this other thing, and but for the most part, those things could come over. My quizzes and stuff, they're just quirky enough in each place that I just didn't bring that in. What I did find a real disadvantage, because I used labels all over the place, including all those conditional labels, it turned every one of those into a different page. And I just said, forget it. I'm just going to build all those separately, because I in Moodle, I would always have, the section header part that said, this is what the week is, and sort of a bullet list of, these are the topics this week. And then below that, I would have labels with, here's the readings. And then below that, I'd have the assignments, right? And so I had labels saying, to make it look nice, readings, and then an area that would have the be a label that had the readings, sometimes with links to materials, sometimes just telling them out of the book that they had bought. And then below that, another label saying activities and assignments, and under that might be any number of different assignments. And so because each week had those labels in each section, it just made each of those labels a different page. And so then I couldn't really grab anything that was, here's the structure for that week. Turn all that into the HTML code. That's the page that they would have here, if that makes sense. So I just found.
So when you use the labels in your Moodle course, are you using it literally so that they see, like, oh, there's a green label, I know that's going to be my reading. There's an orange label, I know that's going to be my assignment. So do the students use the labels like similarly to the way you might use tags, and do they sometimes just view all of that label of all of my assignments by choosing?
Well, yeah, let me just bring it up, and I can, with it not being in well, okay, it's automatically does that, but if you look, right, I always have just the main place where everybody lands, and the course announcements and questions and concerns and stuff to me. And this is pretty much the same for each course. It's structured fairly similarly. Below that, I always have a section that they can collapse that has a bunch of the resources for the course, and it keeps opening more and more as the course gets through, so that I don't confuse them. And then I have, these are ongoing collaborative projects that they're doing. So I set up all these things that they're pointing to Google Docs and Google Sites that they're building together.
Okay.
And then each week, I have a dated week. Here's the part that's in the section with Moodle. Then I have my readings. Then I have my activities and assignment label. And then I have whatever it is for that week is going to be there. Same thing down here. So they get used to seeing summary of what we're dealing with, some material I deal with, readings, and all the assignments. And then, and I do this again. And this structure I'm finding is hard to transfer over.
Okay.
Because I'm having to build assignments over here and these things over there. Because when I'm sitting here and I want to add an activity, I just add it right here. Yeah. And then it drops in there. And over there, I'm having to track, okay, is it over here? Is it a published one? Is it inside something where I haven't given the permission or whatever?
Can we look quickly over at your course, your Canvas course that you had on the other page?
Yeah.
I just want to go in and look at one of your, just like inside one of your weeks, like if you go into like modules. So
yeah. So
you're not really directing the students to look through modules.
No. Some are, just because they kind of probably think in a code head way that I do. And so what I've tried to do is I have them experience it this way, where they go home and then they go to the weekly modules, and in each week, here's a given week. This is what the week looks like. So you can see I'm echoing the aesthetics not quite as cleanly as what I used to do, right? And I could go, jump more directly to all the other pages. But see, that's that thing of I can view pages and I can jump in here and be going this direction, which some like and some don't. Some find this stuff harder. But, I've got my embedded videos. I've got my readings with links to places. I've got my assignments, and this is a group discussion, and this was another page saying, pick one of these things, and so I was giving them just some information. So I'm in a sense having to rebuild all that weekly aesthetics of here you are, here's where you land. And I could, I suppose, as you were saying, some people like to change the home to be this week's page. Right. But then it's a little bit harder for them to know, if I come in, I can always drill down in this direction. Yeah. Right. Because home keeps changing on them. Yeah. And so that's why I like home to always be the same place.
It's home.
Yeah. But there are other little things that I am picking up that I think is also helping them with navigations, because not only do I have these buttons, but I also have these and these linked to the same thing. So in terms of accessibility or finding it, and people are like, I don't know. And that's just sort of an accessibility design kind of principle that I was trying to carry through.
Okay.
And eventually what I was hoping is that most of my weekly pages, I'd start putting things like home down there, or, if there's more reading resources specific to that week, maybe I could do those layers, but it's just too much work the first go round. Next summer I'll do more.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So your overall experience, question 19, what is your overall, if you stand back and look at Canvas overall, what's your feeling about it?
It's prettier, and it's easier to keep from getting. Um, Let me back up. I think some of the stuff is more integrated. So when I get to implement more of the grade stuff, both from the speed grading as the way of grading and other stuff, it does feel like it's going to be smoother interaction, and I see it more likely that I could end up moving to using, for instance, on a tablet for grading and things, less needing of a full-blown computer. Moodle, I find, doesn't work with mobile devices anywhere near so well. And so I could see from both the student's perspective and from mine, that'll be a nice thing. But my general sense is I feel like Canvas protects me too much from myself. And Moodle gives me the ability, and it just feels so much more customizable that when I think from a pedagogical perspective, what do I want to do here? I'm more likely to be able to do it in Moodle than if I'm trying to do it in Canvas. Because you can see from my 200 course that I was just showing you in Moodle, I've embedded all kinds of stuff. And I've even experimented one semester with trying to have Zoom sessions available for them. And it turned out, because of the features of Zoom, it didn't work. But it was a fairly easy thing for me to add on and try. And so I leave just that you can Zoom me for office hours kind of thing. But I use such a wide range. I use formulas for calculating. So, for instance, final projects for my students, I have them give a presentation and I have them hand in a paper. And then I weigh whichever they do better twice as much as the one that they didn't do as well. So if they're really good at presentations, that gets them through the final presentation. I mean, the final project grade, better on that if they're better at writing, but they still get, they have to do the other one, but it doesn't break them down as much. And I can't, doing those kinds of formulas across things.
It's an interesting way of weighing grading, I think, that like one of these two will be weighed twice as much as the other one.
and again, that's back to principles of differentiation. That my wife's a teacher, and she's saying, one of the things that we should be able to use with all these automated devices is tailor the needs for the individual student. And my goal is to have things like, if they need more remediation on one particular area, you can keep them going in circles on that till they get enough mastery that they bump out. And to the other that comes through and that was not a problem with them at all, it doesn't keep them locked in there. And that's my holy grail of setting up the courses.
Sort of adaptive learning.
Exactly.
If you have a sense that you need someone needs to spend more time on this. I mean, I guess that learning that focuses towards mastery could do that too. Would be one way to, once you have shown me that you know this, then you can go on to the next.
Because some of my topics are highly cumulative. Like you can't be dealing with syntax and some other levels of linguistics until you've already come through phonetics and phonology and morphology. So if they don't get these parts, it's like trying to do calculus without having had algebra, or trig or stuff before it. Right? You need to do those before the calculus is going to work. And so I find when those kinds of courses are made as big as they're being made for me, the only way I think it's going to work is if I can get adaptive learning on the fundamentals.
To know that on the fundamentals they're rock solid. And I guess, what do you do with people that are, I mean, those things sound like they could be challenging for some people.
They're really challenging.
The second half of the course they might not be able to do.
Right. And so what I'm finding is, like some of the math courses and even some of the composition classes, my lower division intro, that 200 class, is a higher DWF class. Because the students just aren't used to, yes, you have to do this 6 hours every week from the first week, right? And they're kind of more expecting that in calculus. They don't think an anthro class is going to do that to them until they get, whacked up. So that class, I have many more repeats than I have of other ones.
Mm-hmm. How clear is that type of thing from the syllabus side of things, or how much do students know about that before they?
I really try and make it clear when they start in, and I reiterate. I even have like in this class, I used it. I hadn't put it this particular semester in the 200, but in a syllabus quiz, say, how many hours are you going to be working on this course, right?
Mm.
It's in the course. I do a quote out of the course catalog. Point them to where it is as policy, but they honestly don't believe it until they fail.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you really are at college. This isn't high school anymore. And for some, it just takes some failing.
Do you think that customization, that you're able to adapt it more to your pedagogies? You have ideas that obviously different fields and different disciplines, they rely on different styles of teaching and learning. And so do you feel like Moodle is better positioned to be more helpful to more disciplines in terms of letting them be able to work the way that they would like to work?
Yeah, because I think that's part of my concern with the flexibility of Canvas is if we were just doing fairly simple weekly assignments and whatnot, great. But when you've got really interesting, complicated things, what they run people through for accounting is completely different than what they're going to be doing in computer science. Is completely different than what art history might be. So I see that the ability that I can have as an assignment, they upload a link to a video that they worked on collaboratively. So we can go into that kind of media stuff. I imagine all kinds of arts and humanities stuff could do that. And I think about traditional papers, or you can have so-called objective quizzes and tests, right? So that's sort of flashcard learning kind of stuff, that's different fields are different. How much memorization of terms and images and whatnot. Okay, Moodle's really easy to build that way, and that's what I mean by the flexibility. What's good for some of us is going to not be even needed by some of the others. And Moodle, I feel like in its awkward way, can do all of it. And Canvas is sort of, and that's why it sort of reminds me of more like what I see done in high school kinds of space, and here we're dealing with things so complex that Moodle opens that up.
What percentage of faculty do you feel like take advantage of, like, are more deep things that sort of meet the pedagogy of that rely on the LMS for it? Because they're going to do it one way or another, and they're probably doing it offline. But
I think it's really changing. 10 years ago, we were a minority. And now I think the folks coming out of the R1s with their PhDs, they've been living in it since the time they went to grad school. And so their expectation is, of course, you're going to have all of this. So we're just waiting for us old folks to cycle out, and the new ones come in, and they're the early adopters. We see it in who signs up to do the pilot stuff, right? Some of us who've always been, liking the ragged edge. Karen Jaffe's one of them, and others. But there's a bunch of others who it's going to be kicking and screaming, and they're going to try and hold off until they retire, I think. And so they'll just use it as a place to dump files. Maybe put up a grade book that they're entering the grades manually. I also know that it really varies by discipline, because some of the folks in the arts and humanities don't use it at all, and other folks in the arts and humanities are using it. So that's kind of interesting too.
Did you sense any difference in the way that it might support, like, online learning versus face-to-face classes?
Well, I haven't tried to do this for online learning, so I don't know if I have enough there. But I've used Moodle online for online learning, and I liked it. It seemed to make sense. It seemed to work, as much as anything can.
What about from the student side of things? Like, one way to look at the customization versus kind of a standardization,
Right.
that there would be more a regular expectation of when you go into your different classes of how they would be likely structured and what you'd have access to. Do you have any sense of, from the student side of things, of?
Yeah, it's hard to say because this reminds me of when we first came into Moodle and everybody's courses were all over the map. And then we started having the cult courses and other things like that. We got this idea of, oh, yeah, you need to have signposts to guide them through, and you need to think about the structure, and, use your blocks judiciously. And so some of that was actually just basic LMS stuff, regardless of platform. And so I think that we're seeing right now it's all over the map, because we haven't been looking at each other's courses. We haven't seen it. We haven't been developing a university style.
And that could be just the way that we manage it as a university, that we'd have more.
Here's some HTML code. Put this on the top of your home pages, and it'll give this nice uniform kind of feel of where I am. And your assignments, maybe you could do these things.
And it could be departments could have more. I know that everybody's spread thin, and people are a little bit in their own. Teachers are responsible for a lot, and they take on that responsibility, and then they end up sort of building a silo. So sometimes it's hard to, there's that balance of how much you, if you standardize things, does it feel restrictive, or just
and that can vary by the culture of the department, because I look at what like math offers, and I'm trying to think like maybe biology and a few of those other courses. They'll have these lower division courses that will have 5 or 10 sections. And they'll say, this course, this is a textbook you have to use, and this is the layout of your Moodle site, and this is whatever. And that's just the way it is for that lower division course. And
it's meta courses that.
And I totally get that. That's great. But if you're then going over women and gender studies, totally different. They aren't going to want that. And so, we should be able to be flexible by department.
So have you discovered any particular strengths of Canvas that?
I love that you move something and it helps you move all the dates. That is one of those things that I'm constantly being bit by yet another thing that I didn't reset the date on. I love the idea of that being. I don't mind it shifting a couple of, maybe it didn't move to the right day of the week, but at least it's showing up in the right week, and I'm finding it. And I'm constantly finding something where the last time I taught the course was 2 years ago, and I've got a 2014 date.
And there's always something that happens in the middle of a semester. Something happens, and you shift it one course, and I think that Canvas has more tools for allowing you to like shift all this material one.
That's a win. And just say, oh, I'm going to move this assignment 2 weeks down. You just drag it and you're done. And you don't have to change your grade book. You don't have to change all the dates. You don't have to, it's just done. And I like that. And I really wish Moodle had that. So that I think could be a big win, especially once the courses are all built. And you're going to be more doing that kind of stuff. That's a big win. And Moodle certainly doesn't have that.
And just tell me a little bit about any challenges viewing. This is question 21. Have you encountered any difficulties teaching with Canvas?
So one of the things I find hard, and it's actually still a problem with Moodle too, I can't put myself into a student mode and then see how is the behavior of the site like from the student's perspective.
Did you see the student, like the masquerading mode in Canvas?
Well, I've seen stuff that Bob's been able to do when he can log in and switch his ID and become that person and go around and do stuff, right? And he can do that also in Moodle. I'm not aware that I could do something like that.
So I can show you very quickly that I did see that we came across it when you were in one of the places. I think when you go into that settings that... and on the upper right-hand side, after it loads, see where it says student view? It's like, and so when you click on that, then you get a sense of what the students will see. And you can see it'll say you're in the student view. So it's kind of got this little...
but what this doesn't allow me to do is be student X. Because if I'm trying to have things visible in a differentiated way, I and Moodle doesn't do this either for me. When Bob can take on an identity, right, and actually, in a sense, switch user, right, in the old sort of Unix mindset, then the system acts like that for them, and it shows up.
So you might want to see, what does it look like if I'm a student who's currently getting a C in a course? Like there might be different things visible,
things that are opening up,
things that are opening them up, and things like that. So you kind of want to be able to masquerade as particular, not a generic student, but as
student X in my roster.
Oh, so you want to be able to look through the eyes of a particular student in your roster. And that's I think that makes a lot of sense. I know that's something that I often have difficulty doing. When you're working with systems behind and then the front, there's always that question of what are other people actually saying?
And the number of times I thought something like these buttons for the longest time, my students couldn't see them. They just said locked. They were getting the image of this is a locked file. And it's because I had made the images in one place, moved files around in my files subdirectory to try and organize that part so it's a little less confusing to them, but inadvertently put some published files underneath an unpublished directory, so they suddenly couldn't see the images. And it just kept looking pretty to me because I can see everything.
Looks good.
And they're just like, well, I can click on that thing that I can't see, and it is taking me to the place where I should be going. But it was ugly. It was like, you guys were doing this for 2.5 weeks, and nobody told me this, or for 3 weeks or something.
Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, so that was funny. But
so that's an interesting, putting published things in unpublished directories. You're trying to just organize your life a little bit, and then you've ended up causing problems with permissions essentially. And could you get into problems like that with Moodle too, or is that
Moodle? If the file's available to you, right, it's keeping all that stuff in a place that it sort of isn't in the course in the same way, right? It's not visible to the students at all, right? And so if you're pointing to something that's in there, it's not in a directory that's hidden, right? Anything I point to, I'll see.
I know that some people like I'm publishing this module or I'm publishing this content. They like having that kind of confirmation.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. I mean, I do like to see that, but then it's that funny thing of, I thought the file itself was published, bringing in the Moodle paradigm. And then didn't realize, no, it's more like Unix file directories, where you got anyone along the way down if you don't get
they inherit the permissions above them. And so
which I get. I mean, once I saw that, it's like, I know it, and now I'm watching for it.
And so it's hard to know how much of those types of things, at least once it bites you once, you'll be like, okay, that's the way it works. And some of those things could be learning, getting used to a new system. And the workflow, tell me just briefly about anything that a workflow that you relied on in Moodle, and you've mentioned a couple of them that you weren't able to recreate in Canvas.
I've hit some of them so far. Those are the ones that I'm remembering.
There's like the labels, and there's like the way that you hide things, the conditional showing and hiding. That's a pretty good, useful one. There's things about the grades, about the balancing.
The weighting of grades.
The weighting of grades. You used formulas that were a little bit more complicated than what you have available to you. So in Canvas, you can group things, and you can't weigh things within that group, And I know there are other people that have mentioned that it's a frustration to them. You can assign different points to things, but you can't. I guess you kind of are assigning conditional points depending on which way is better.
Bigger. And so it's sort of a monster formula.
I'd love to see that.
So if we Oh, it's not in this course. Let me go to one of my other courses where I think I have to go to one of last semester's courses. Yeah, I was in one of last semester's courses. So, oops. And 300, there it is. And just go there. And if I go to grades, wait a minute. My brain is gone. I'm tired. Oh, administration course grades. Go here. And then I go into grade setup. And I go down to my final project, right? And is it up here? I think maybe here it might be in the project total. Oops, expand all. Nope, it's the other one. Sorry. If I go to here, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Hello? Is it not there? Oh, I was too eager. I think it was
too eager.
Yeah, it was still spinning. So let's go back to it. I was looking at the wrong tab and thought it had finished loading. No. Oh no, it's exams, not final project. I'm running on about 4 hours sleep, so sorry about that.
Okay. Actually, for once in my life, I could sleep this weekend.
There we go.
Okay.
So what I have is final project 01 and final project 02. And so
is there, I'm just curious, and where do you, is there like a guide, a Moodle guide that shows you how to build the formulas for your grades, or is that just something that you,
it just,
if there was a faculty member that didn't know how to do this?
Yeah, well, I just went looking for, I think somewhere out there in the world is something that said, what are the functions that you can have in your calculations?
Okay.
And I saw, averages and max mins and things like that. And somebody does spreadsheet stuff all the time. I was also expecting that there would be. Right? And so here was sort of, Excel stuff coming out, I think, more than true coding.
Well, it's good to know that people use this, like in the humanities. Like it wasn't shocking to me that the math people, when they started thinking about grades, that they would see, how am I going to use formulas to weigh different things? And I knew that the business people might do that too, but it's good to know that the people in other departments.
Yeah, so I'm a social scientist, so sometimes we're quantitative and sometimes we're not. But I could see somebody in the humanities who thinks of themselves as not needing formulas, but it's like everybody uses formulas in their life. We're always doing that.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. Okay.
This is so. This one I have to ask you because this is something that I think you might have some expertise on. So, question 23 is accessibility, and note any features or issues that might affect individuals with disabilities who are accessing coursework on campus. Please describe.
Yeah. So, what I wish I had been able to test out before we even had a chance to talk is I don't know if any speech to text stuff, text to speech, in terms of what the folks use over at DSS for somebody who might be blind or might have vision issues, or I'm thinking like the read and write gold kinds of accommodations that sometimes for attentiveness learning kinds of things. It's not clear to me how accessible this is, but then again, Moodle is problematic too, right? So if that's what they're meaning by accessibility,
Mm-hmm.
I find things like when I was trying to do these buttons. So wait a minute, where is my? Back to Firefox. When I was doing these buttons and things like that, I have found it easier in Moodle for some reason to add, like when my cursor hovers over this, I don't get that little text box that I get in Moodle that says, this is a picture of people sitting there, you know? Yeah. So that kind of thing I noticed was missing in this one.
So if you click on the, can you click on the editing of this? I want to see if there's, you probably have to leave the student view.
Oops, yeah.
On the bottom right.
Right, yeah.
But Moodle does prompt you every time you add an image to add like the alt text.
Right.
Right.
And I didn't see any nudge for alt text or a way of doing it. You know.
And so like those graphics of your.
So I just made those buttons.
Those buttons, like they don't have alt text, whereas they would have probably if you were in your Moodle course.
Yeah, which is why I put those things on the bottom. Was because I couldn't figure out a way to do an alt text on the buttons, and I thought, well, what if I had somebody who had a visibility issue? I'm going to drop those things down there.
So at the very least, if we go to Canvas, we're going to need to do more investigation of how the issues like that,
alt text.
That obviously you're somebody who has a course where issues of accessibility might be something people were thinking about, and so it wasn't obvious to you. But it wouldn't be obvious to somebody that wasn't as tuned into those things.
Right. Yeah.
Let alone being prompted to answer those things.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have time for one more question? Or?
Well, I have some students who are waiting for me now. So
okay.
We're going to meet at 11:30. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you want,
I'll just give them a heads up that I'm coming, though.
Okay.
So they don't panic.
That sounds good.
All right. So they were. If I
should have clarified exactly what your when you have to leave was.
Well, I think we had said, it'll be roughly 10 to 11:30 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's fine. So let me go to and then just post on my Praxis discussion. Okay. So. But what I can do is ask one of them to go fetch from the copy center. Okay. So I will put it over here. So. All right. Post it immediately. Okay. All right.
This is just question 24. SSU, if they choose to adopt Canvas, what types of support, training, or information would best help your colleagues to make a smooth transition? Do you have any sense of like what you needed when you took this pilot, and if there are any particular areas that you think that?
I think giving people a good heads up on how different all that stuff that you might have done with labels, right? That won't come over easy. And so some, maybe there's a workshop session of saying you have to figure out, is it easier to build from scratch? Well, but by cutting and pasting from where you came from, right? Or is it easier to do an import, right? And flagging in which ways those work. So if the weeks didn't have lots of labels in them, then I could see it would be much less for somebody. But if they if they had lots of those labels, they might want to think, okay, start from scratch. It would be interesting to see what are the things that are easier in HTML versus not. You know, just
in the copying and pasting.
Yeah, because an awful lot of grotty stuff accumulates in HTML code that, you know, because it doesn't seem to do anything, it just keeps staying in there. It kind of reminds me of extraneous DNA. You know, and then suddenly something gets activated, it stops working right because it doesn't have a matching close, you know, or something. So I think that would be good. I also think if we could end up having Colt and the similar kinds of, like, how do you build a Canvas site to be welcoming, to be easy for a student to navigate through, to make it accessible. If we could have Canvas-oriented ones of those, or if we have different features in a hosting Moodle, whichever we go to, it would be really nice having some on just the general stuff, some on the accessibility stuff. That would be really nice.
And like sort of an exemplar way that people have set it up that is good for those things, the use of the students and the, you know, there are people that workarounds people might try to make their Canvas look like their Moodle site. It might turn out that there's some of those things are problematic, and we might be able to spare people from going having to do the same thing that you guys have done twice. I found a lot of people that imported and then ended up rebuilding their class.
Right. And I'm doing a bit of each.
And you're doing a bit of each. And so what is really a best, the best way to migrate for different types of users?
Yes. The other thing that might be really nice to have is a couple of default templates of whole courses. And so since we have 16 weeks in a semester and finals or whatever, if there was one that was already built out with a home page and you know, a page for each of the weeks, you know, and things kind of already set up there that you could just do a little bit of easy aesthetic work on, but it might be already there, and that might be nice. And I could imagine, you know, a template for a meta course being set up that way, a template for a humanities and writing oriented, whatever experiential kind of course, and another one that might be, I don't know, just trying to think, if one that there's lots of different sort of quizzes or something in it, right?
So you've got kind of like that shell structure already kind of built, and you could drag things into those shell structures or delete some of them.
Yeah, just go in and edit them. And I think that would be nice.
Any additional comments? Or
appreciate all the work you folks are doing. I wish we weren't pushed so hard that there's almost no room to get the feedback in before some key decisions have to happen.
It would have been nice if people had been able to live in their courses longer, you know, to figure out all the grading and things like that.
Part of my problem was I was traveling in August out of country, and so that would have been the natural time for me to be building up more of it. A lot of it wasn't available to me when I was doing stuff in June, right? It wasn't quite ready for us to be jumping in and doing stuff. And then I traveled for the summer, which is very common for anthropologists. So, so that affected the piloting. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate